Hey everybody, if you're like me and fascinated with the history of things, you're really going to like today's show. After the popularity of last week's I Like Furniture period, I was thinking you all seem to like this educational stuff, so let's keep that going. So, Josh Levine Speaks is proud to present The History of Silver. It's forking interesting. Today, you're going to learn the history of silver in Western culture, the British sterling hallmark system, and maybe a few cool tricks to impress your friends. You might even make a few bucks off what I teach you today. Sound good? All right, just a quick business plug. Subscribe below, follow my shows, and don't forget to head over to joshlevinespeaks.com. Check out my blog, all the free information and entertainment and updates. So, without further ado, let's get started. Have you ever wished your things could talk? Tell the stories of where they've been, who they belong to, and what they've seen? Then you really get me. However, if you believe your things are talking to you, seek immediate medical advice, because unless it's your old stuffed animals, everybody knows your stuffed animals talk to you, so that's okay. But unless it's them. Okay, so today, I want your fork to tell you a story. Your spoons, knives, and other flatware, they have interesting things to say as well. Okay, enough speaking in hyperbole, and yes, I did Google the word to make sure I was using it correctly. What am I talking about? I am talking about silver and its hallmarks. And I don't mean greeting cards, I mean the little symbol thingies on your old flatware sets and tableware and candlesticks, etc., jewelry. I can't tell you how many things have these little marks, and how many people have these things in their home and they've had them for decades and don't even ever notice them. It's almost like a magic or parlor trick when I show up at somebody's house, pick up a fork and say, did you know this is 120 years old, made in Dublin and by Edmond Johnson? And they're like, what? Did it speak to you? Yes, of course it did. No, I just knew the hallmarks. And before I teach you how to do this parlor trick, let me bestow upon you a brief history of silver. And I mean the history of silver as eating utensils. The first incarnation, the spoon. It's true, one of the oldest eating utensils after our fingers was the spoon. So spooning has been around for a long time, ladies. And that's just to see if you guys were listening. Spoons have played such an important role in human development. The first forms were really shells, and then later they attached sticks to them. You know, our earliest ancestors began to work with metal and silver and iron. Guess what they made with these first tools? Spoon-shaped utensils. Since then, the shape of the spoon has remained relatively unchanged. In fact, Etruscan spoons dating from 700 BC are so similar to what we have today, it's surprising. Knives, of course, made an early appearance in human history because you gotta stab a person, right? The fork appeared in time, but its use as an eating utensil was considered scandalous because, you know, forks were sacrilegious in Western culture even as late as the 16th century because, after all, God had given us nature's forks, our fingers. And the character known as, who's that guy, Beelzebub, the devil? He was in the forks. So scandalous. Anyway, however, by the 17th century, the flatware set began to be accepted and more common, and guess what they had? Forks. So, today it'd be difficult to imagine a world without forks, spoons, and knives, and historians actually believe these instruments to be some of the most important inventions in Western culture. So, now that you got your crash course in silver, let's get into the hallmarks and identification. And when we're talking hallmarks, now used the world over, we really have to thank the British. They understood the connection between silver and money. In 1158, Henry II deemed 92.5% silver to 7.5% copper to be sterling silver and the standard required for British coinage. Henry III, in 1238, said anything made or wrought of sterling must be of the same standard. So they got 6 goldsmiths in London, and they were responsible for enforcing this rule. But not until Edward II in 1300 passed the law requiring a lion's head hallmark to prove the assayers had verified the sterling content, and thus the system we know today began. British silver is some of the most common you will find in a relative's closet or drawers. It has always been well known for its quality and now legendary hallmark system. Their marks continued to develop through the centuries, and now they tell us a great deal. I am using British silver as an example due to the abundant output of their silversmiths. It's all over the world. So you probably have some in your family tree or family drawer somewhere. And other countries of origin, they started to develop their own system, and I got links below to them, but I want to dig in and show you how this works, so I'm going to use the English system. Today, it only takes a good loop, a little practice, and a few websites out there to really figure out anything regarding hallmarks. Here's your practical crash course education, plus I'm going to give you some visual aids. Remember, the links are down below as well. So let's take or grab an English silver spoon. Are you excited? Soon you too will amaze or bore your friends. And here's how you read them. First, you'll generally have what's known as a standard mark. The most common I have found is the lion with the paw raised, which lets you know the piece is in fact 0.925 sterling. This is so valuable to know when you're out at an estate or yard sale, because this lion can make you a lot of money. Everybody thinks if it doesn't say sterling, it's not. In fact, the word sterling is stamped on post-1870 American pieces. English pieces, unless they were made for US export, will have a lion, or a unicorn if it's made in Glasgow, or a thistle if it's made in Edinburgh, and so on. You see how this can make you money or cost your family a lot of money? It didn't say sterling, but it had a little thingy on it. Let's keep going. The next mark you're going to look for is the city mark, if that's specified. London had a lion's head, Birmingham had an anchor, Sheffield had a crown, Glasgow a tree, and so on. Third thing you're going to look for is the duty mark or reign mark. I like to call it the reign mark because people giggle when I say the duty mark. This mark was to indicate a tax paid to the crown and featured the reigning monarch at the time. This really helps when dating. Therefore, let me give you an example. You have King George III. So his bust will tell you that it's 1786 to 1821. George IV will tell you 1822 to 1833. And if you see Queen Victoria's head, you know the piece is from like 1838 to 1890, and so on. Now, dating it, which is super cool, there is actually a date letter code. And this is where it gets fun, as there are so many letters in the alphabet, so after 26 times, you got to figure out what's going on. So to make up for this, they changed to uppercase fonts, lowercase fonts, they changed the outer symbols on the edge, and it can cause some confusion. But again, if you know your monarch, and you know your maker, and you know your date code, you can piece it together. The fifth thing, which I'm going to get into, is the maker's mark. Beginning in London in approximately 1363, a maker's mark was established so it be known who made the piece when it was presented to the assayer for purity, forgery, or taxation, and hey, let's just call it 14th century accountability. Here's an example. Look at the back of a fork and you will see all the elements I discussed, not necessarily in the order you'd expect, but they're all there. The maker, the city, the date code, the standard, and the duty mark. I want to point out, sometimes it takes a super trained eye to find out where the heck these are on pieces. Not so much with flatware, you can find it, but candlesticks, tea trays, ewers, I've spent 10 minutes scanning a piece only to give up, hand it off to somebody, I used to call it fresh eyes, have fresh eyes look at it, and then they could find it. So let's get back to our fork. What do we know? Well, we know it's sterling because it has the lion with his raised paw. It's actually called the lion pesant if you want to sound fancy. All right, we know it's from Sheffield because it has the crown mark of Sheffield. We know it bears the mark of Queen Victoria, so it's made between 1838 and 1890. So what Sheffield maker had the mark HW & Co. during this period? That's Henry Wilkinson & Co. Based on all that, bearing the capital E in a square with a clipped corner tells us it's 1872. And yes, I would have used my field guide or gone to the website on my free resource link on my website where I have the best free silver Hallmark identification sites in the business. Okay, but anyway, I'd like you to imagine you're now at your grandmother's house, sitting down for dinner and could say, after a little table sleuthing, "Hey, Meemaw, these forks are British. And did you know they were made in 1872 in Sheffield by Henry Wilkinson & Co.? Wow, wouldn't she be impressed?" So what does that all mean? Now you might have just solved a mystery your grandmother wanted to know for years. Take that, Ancestry.com. Perhaps now she would know this set that she had in her family for years was from her mother's side of the family that emigrated from Sheffield at the turn of the century, and so on. A question she always wanted to know the answer to. Super cool, right? I think it's cool. And plus, she might then leave the set to you. Anyway, by the way, this Hallmark game can be played with thousands of things you never dreamt of. Say you're trapped in the house with nothing to do this weekend, or next. Look at the old silver estate jewelry, and so on. These little hidden clues are everywhere. If you get hooked, you're going to look at your friends' forks, fancy restaurant flatware, Colonel Mustard's candlesticks in the library. You get it. I can't help it. And you won't be able to help it either because Hallmarks are everywhere. And it's actually fun too for nerds. Until next time, or next dinner party. And we will have dinner parties again. Trust me, the zombies have not won. So as I sign off, I want to sign off with this. Subscribe to my channel, click like, leave a comment, share with a friend, and go check out my blog, joshlevinespeaks.com. Goodbye.